Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's Tuesday Tune-Up. I'm Tia Christensen, and this is your spot for a weekly energy boosts and how to embody your wisdom so that you can make unshakable decisions in life. And today we're talking about grief. And it's been a week. So I'd like to share with you first off that in January, if you don't already know this, in January, my sister and I unexpectedly lost our mom. And it has been a journey. My mom and I weren't always close. There were a great many years, well over a decade, where we were actually not in touch with one another. And we had a beautiful reconciliation and a beautiful conversation about 5 years ago, where we just opened the door to the stories that I had been carrying and how that had impacted me. And I didn't know how to reconnect with her. And we had a great cry on the phone. And I am forever grateful for that conversation. And I was not listening to my intuition at the end of last year. I've talked about this before, and this is what caused me and was the message to relaunch Tuesday Tune-Up, to support you in being in touch with your intuition. I kept thinking, gosh, it would be really great for me to book a trip out to Oregon and see all my friends out there that I haven't seen in years. I used to live in Oregon. I went to the University of Oregon and I spent 10 years there. That's where I launched my career in the music industry. So I have a lot going on in the state of Oregon. And that's where our mom was living. And in fact, I was born there. And I kept thinking, I'll do it in the first part of next year. I'll do it in the first part of next year. And I know better. When something occurs to me over and over and over again, that is always the divine whispering in my ear and in your ear, hey, pay attention. I didn't book the trip. And then in January, my sister received an unexpected phone call from our mother's partner, boyfriend, fiance, saying that she wasn't well. Long story. The short of it is our mom ended up having suffered a debilitating stroke. So my sister and I booked us flights. We flew out the next day as soon as we got the word. A week later, it was very clear that there wasn't quality of life for our mom anymore. So we got to be present with her for an entire week. And I'll speak into my experience. I did everything I possibly could to create the most beautiful atmosphere for her. I set up an altar. I did my daily rituals in the room. I did sacred geometry. I cleansed the space. I did Reiki with our mom. I went into meditation and talked with our mom's higher self and her soul and asked her if she'd like to be initiated into the lineage of King Solomon. And she said, yes, and please anoint me when it's time. And so we did all these things. And for all these months, I have this periodic heartache of, I didn't listen to what the divine was telling me, which was go to Oregon and go see your mom. So not from a place of self-beat up and not from a place of, I'm just going to say it like I'm a piece of crap, from a place of, Tia, your intuition was speaking to you. And it was the same thing around my cancer diagnosis last year. So that happened in December, and our mom transitioned in January. And for the last 2 years, you may have heard me speak about this before, my body was telling me, hey, you should start paying attention to whether or not inflammation is going to be an issue for you. And I was like, I really should get into a regular exercise routine. I should probably really look at the foods that I'm eating in a new kind of way. And am I eating foods that are supporting me and that are not supporting me? And these are the things that, this is how I live my life. When these thoughts occur, it is always your intuition. It is always the divine speaking to you. And my question is from a place of curiosity, how often do you ignore those messages? How often do you brush them off? That is why we're gathering here every single week, to bring us together, to be in conversation, to see how I can support you in being in touch with your physical body through a very foundational practice, which is embodying your connection with your five senses, which supports you in locking in and embodying your intuitive abilities, your psychic abilities, whether or not you're clairsentient, clairvoyant, clairaudient, how you receive information. Because when we're in the flow of receiving and hearing that information and acting upon it, we can make unshakable choices, be it for our career, our health, our families, our loved ones, ourselves, how we move into self-love, how we move into unlocking our creative expression, and being in absolute connection with our imaginative mindset, and how that supports us in life so that we can be in abundance. We can have boundless joy, and we can create a life of limitless possibilities. So I'm going to go ahead and move us into the part of our time together where I'm going to have a focused beam of Reiki being sent to you. So let's start with our 3 breaths. And if you're able to do so, go ahead and close your eyes and lean on back in your chair or whatever you might be sitting in. And we're going to breathe in as deep as we can through our nose. We're going to hold that breath at the top just for a moment. And we're going to exhale for a count of 4. And I'm going to guide you the whole way. So let's go ahead and breathe that first breath in together now. And holding at the top. And exhaling for 4, 3, 2, and 1. Breathing in again as deep as we can. And holding and exhaling for 4, 3, 2, and 1. And breathing in together one more time, nice and deep. And holding and exhaling for 4, 3, 2, and 1. So the energy that's coming through today, in addition to the Reiki energy that's being beamed right into your crown chakra and down through your central channel, is Mother Gaia, Mother Nature. We're here in the world. I don't know about you, but I'm sensing the subtle changes as the shift in seasons is about ready to come upon us, especially here in the Northeast. We're getting evenings where there's a crisper temperature, a crisper air that's coming, which always signals to me that fall is right around the corner. And actually, I'm going to grab right here off of my altar in the kitchen the Queen Anne's lace that I picked, which is growing, actually, pollinating, growing all around where I live. And I'll get to the message behind Queen Anne's lace for me here in a moment. But smelling that Queen Anne's lace, feeling the energy of Mother Gaia, the trees, all of the vegetables and things that we've been growing, things that the farms have been growing, what's coming into bloom and fruition to be picked at this time of season before we hit fall and we move into pumpkins and squashes and all of the seasonal vegetables of fall in the Northeast. And of course, that's different throughout the country and wherever in the world you live. So I'm inviting you to connect with that energy. The invitation today is to connect with what is blossoming. What is blossoming around you, quite in your physical universe, through Mother Gaia, and what is blossoming in your life. Inviting in your connection to your 5 senses, the sense of sight, what is around you that is coming into bloom or fruition. Your sense of hearing. Are you sensing a change in the birds? The bird calls? Is there a migration that's beginning or not about to begin in the area that you live in? Is there a message that maybe you've been ignoring and you've been not tuned in that you get to tune into now? Is there a song that keeps coming up on your playlist or on the radio? That's not a coincidence. Or a piece of music or a saying that you keep hearing. And what's the message there? Our sense of smell. What are the smells of this season for you, and what do they remind you of? What are they stirring in your heart? What are they waking up for you? Our sense of taste, the flavors of our food. Are you slowing down to be in connection with those flavors of our food? And what are the memories that come forward for you in connection with those flavors? What's the message there? Our sense of touch. Maybe you're gardening and you're pulling those weeds. And as you get your hands in the dirt, what does that feel like? What does that wake up? What does that stir in your body? What does that stir in your soul? So invitations today from Mother Gaia and the divine, whatever your word is for it, goddess, God, spirit, universe, to be in connection with our physical universe through the gifts of Mother Gaia and really activating our five senses. So you're free to open your eyes at any point in time, or you can keep them closed, because I'm going to shift into, while this energy continues to be transmitted to you, I'm going to shift into the really talking about grief and processing grief and being in connection with our five senses so that we can be in deep connection with our physical body is one of the number one tools for processing grief. Because when we hold on to our grief, and my sister and I had a text exchange here this morning, my sister Alethea and I was already getting, yesterday as I was meditating and planning for today's Tuesday tune-up, this whole idea of grief came forward, and I was resistant to it. I really was. And I'm still feeling a little resistance to it because I'm like, who am I to speak into grief when I'm so deep in it still? And it's the perfect time to talk about that. And my sister and I were checking with each other this morning, and she mentioned a few things, and I said, well, that's really funny, not funny, ha ha. And it's no coincidence that we're talking about grief and how we can hold on and we can just hang on to things and our emotions and stuff those emotions down and lock them in us. Oh, because we're afraid to release them. How often do we feed ourselves with food to try and make ourselves feel better so that we don't have to deal with those emotions? How often do we drink alcohol, consume consume other substances such as marijuana or psychedelics, or any of the variety of things out there in our world, not from a place of expansion or healing and using it as plant medicine, from a place of burying and numbing ourselves out? Do we use exercise or social activities as a way to avoid dealing with what's happening in our life? So none of these things are inherently bad or bad for us, except for addiction, cigarettes and alcohol and mind-altering substances. When we're not using them as a way to support our expansion or our healing, and we're using those things as a way to avoid, that is locking that energy up in our energy body, in our emotions, and in our physical body. And what happens then? Our physical body moves into dis-ease. It's the root of disease. When we lock that energy in and we do not release it, we inherently create physical ailments. So I'm here to tell you, you got to release the energy. Coming here and receiving Reiki every week, this little bit of short little Reiki that I send you will support you. Being in a practice of being in connection with your five senses, hearing, sight, smell, sound, taste, touch, and being in connection with your heart, so that you're asking yourself, what do I need in this moment? Is it to go outside and find a place on the top of a mountain or a backyard where you just yell as loud as you can and you let those tears come? Because those tears are a release of energy and they're so important. And sometimes those tears are easy and sometimes they're hard to come, because as adults, we've been taught to not cry, because if we cry, if we show up on a live video here on YouTube, it's not professional. It's showing weakness or any of the other variety of stories. And I'm here to tell you, it's about releasing the energy and being in touch with your physical body and your soul and what it needs, so that you can be further in your healing journey, so that you're releasing that stuck energy and not causing an atmosphere or an environment in your physical body which will support the creation of a physical ailment or disease. It's really that important to check in. And are you overeating? Are you over consuming as a way to numb yourself out? Because my love, it's not the solution. So getting outside for a walk, getting your hands in the dirt, going into the woods and hugging a tree, picking a flower, connecting with friends, creating a tasty, healthy meal with your family, loved ones, or even yourself, and taking a bath with candlelight, listening to your favorite songs, creating a playlist, whatever the things are that support you in being able to be in connection with your emotions and that energy. Because emotions is energy in motion. And we get to release that in order to be healed, no matter how difficult it is. So one of the number one things you can do is, who can you call in your life? I have my bestie Donna that I call, or we go through back and forth in Marco Polo a lot. I have my bestie Summer and Pam and so many other people in my life that I can just be like, wow, I'm having a tough day today. I'm having a mom moment. Yeah. So back to my Queen Anne's lace. When I was little, I grew up in a town not far from where I live now. And I understand this in a different way now as an adult. My mom would say, hey, go outside and walk along the road. And why don't you go cut some flowers? And in those days, you know, this is the early 70s, this was not an issue. We grew up in the countryside, and we lived on our main road. It was a long country road. And so it was very safe. And, you know, kids could be outside in the country, and there are a lot, you know, things wouldn't happen often. And I would go out there and I would spend what felt like hours cutting flowers. And the majority of the flowers I cut were Queen Anne's lace. So Queen Anne's lace reminds me of my mom. And here, where I live in this apartment, all around me is blooming Queen Anne's lace. And there are wild blackberries in my backyard. And my mom used to also send me walking along that same road. Hey, go out and pick some berries. Be careful of the yellow jackets, because the yellow jackets nest in the berries, you know, so watch out and look for nests first. You don't want to disrupt them, because those things hurt. Now go out and pick blackberries. So a few weeks ago, I was in my backyard picking blackberries. Mom, there you are. There you are again. And I feel you walking beside me and connecting with all the stories and the things that you taught me and choosing to shift my mindset, to ignite my mindset into those beautiful memories and not staying stuck in the stories of our tough times. And I would come home with all these Queen Anne's lace, and my mom would ask me to pick a color, and I'd pick a color. And mom always had food coloring in the house. And so it felt like magic to me the first couple of times we did this, where she put the Queen Anne's lace in a vase, and we put the color in the water. And the next morning I woke up and the Queen Anne's lace were no longer white. They were the color of that food coloring. And then my mom used it as a way to share with me how flowers actually brought water up through the stem. And so there was a lesson there as well. So, how do you process grief, even in those days when it feels like there's just no going forward? My invitation to you is to check with your body, check with your intuition. What do you need today? Is it just to cry? Just to hug that pillow? Is it to make a favorite food that maybe you enjoyed with your loved one? Is it to call a friend, to go for a walk, to sit by the river, to do some self-care, a massage, a pedicure, a bath, light a candle and say a prayer, whatever that looks like for you, to release what you're hanging on to? How about writing a letter to your loved one? Maybe you didn't have a chance to reconcile. Maybe there was trauma. Maybe there was something that was really hard that you haven't quite worked through yet. One of the most powerful things you can do is write a letter. And then take that letter when you're ready and burn it safely, preferably outside if you can, and create a ceremony and a ritual around it and say, I release these emotions. I release these stories. I release these experiences. They no longer serve me. And then put that letter into the fire and allow the fire to consume what you've been holding on to and transmute that energy, sending it back to source so that it can turn into light. All right, my loves, there's a number of you who are here live today, and I know there's a number of you catching this replay. So I want to just give a moment and give some spaciousness to all that's been shared today and ask you, are there any questions that you have? Is there anything that you would like to share? And if you know someone who's struggling, is really struggling with some level of grief, please share this video with them so that they know that they're not alone, that we're here to support them in their journey. And the other thing I want to speak into as I keep checking the chat here just to see if there's any shares is the grief that I also carry around being a survivor of gun violence and a very public, a very well publicized mass shooting, which was in Las Vegas, and the grief that I feel on a daily basis for all those that were lost that day. Never forgotten. And the heartache and the grief I feel for our country. That every day, it seems, there are multiple mass shootings. And how that also pushes my PTSD button. So as I was going through and figuring out my breast cancer diagnosis in December, and going through all the feelings and the phases and the anger and the no way and all the things that came up with that, I started to notice how similar it was to the trauma and the PTSD symptoms that I was having following my dark night of the soul experience in Las Vegas. And then, really, I think it was 3 to 4 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, when we got that first call that there was something going on with our mom. And then a few weeks, another week after that, that our mom transitioned. And even though I was focused on creating the most beautiful experience possible for her, my grief around that and my behavior patterns and how that was so reminiscent of what I experienced after my trauma event. Anger, obsessive compulsiveness, short temperedness, really wanting to binge eat, and knowing my check is that I am in a cancer journey where I just had my imaging this last week. I am all clear. I am clear. No more meetings with the surgical oncologist. Now it's just meetings with the medical oncologist. As my surgical oncologist called it, the survivorship element. So being in that journey and knowing that I get to continue to support my physical body so that the environment in my body is not conducive to creating cancer cells. And that's my check and balance for my binge eating. So if I'm going to binge eat, it's going to be fruit, or, how do I use my cacao powder to make an amazing chocolate treat, because I love my chocolate treats. So I'm sharing this with you as an invitation and my intention is that there's inspiration here for you to grab onto so that there's a pathway forward. All right, my loves, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to recall this energy, and I cannot wait to read your comments. And if you're feeling a little shy about sharing, please send me an email at TIA at dreamsculptinginstitute.com, and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button down below. It really does help all the algorithms here on YouTube and allows me to be able to do different things like go live in different areas. Once I reach a certain number of subscribers, I can actually use my phone and go live outside, which I'm dying to do. And please leave a comment. And I love being in conversation with you about what's happening in your life. What are you finding is supporting you? And what came up for you today? So, my loves, I am wishing you a beautiful rest of your day. And whatever it is that the grief that's on your heart, I invite you to check in with your heart and your intuition, your connection with the divine, and ask, what's one thing that I can do today to support myself in my grief journey? And then listen and notice what comes up. And feel free to reach out and be in conversation. If you're feeling a little stuck, I am always here to help you. I am loving you passionately, and let's do this.